The outcome of the life cycle assessment was very positive in a lot of different areas. They looked at the individual environmental impact of producing various different products, so things like the proteins and the adhesives, but also looking at how the wet algae biomass was produced as well. Similarly, within the economic case, that a similar approach was taken, looking at the individual production processes and what the economic impacts would be of those. One of the downsides to this particular approach is that it wasn't an integrated case, that each of the processes in reality would really be put together as a combination. Depending on the composition of the algae, you would do 20% of one particular process, or 25% or 50%. And there was no balancing within our LCA work or within the life cycle costing to give a more reflective piece of what the process would actually look like. So whilst you can look at it from a relativistic point of view and see what each of those individual impacts would be, it's not a real world scenario, and some further work would be needed in order to establish what the impact of a Bisigodos product would be. The LCA could be done better by balancing and weighting some of the different products. So in terms of the environmental impacts, how much protein is going to be made from the algae biomass, how much lipid is going to be extracted, and from there you can work out how much of your polymer you're going to make for an adhesive, or how much protein you're then going to use in various different feed applications. And that's one of the key qualities that is needed for life cycle assessment. How much the data really does drive the quality of your assessment, and without that data you really can't get very far. And so that, if we were to run it again, that's something that we would look at trying to do differently to give us some kind of integrated assessment. Likewise, from the economic case, most of the prices that were produced as part of this business model were shown from an individual standpoint. If we were to only make lipids, this is what the cost would be. If we were to only make proteins, this is what the cost would be. The reality is that you would never just make one of the products. The petrochemical industry does not make one single product from crude oil, and neither does the bio-based industry from algae oils. So what would the overall price be of this portfolio of products? And that would be the improvement for our business case. For me personally, I think life cycle assessment should be done either up front or as part of the design process. One of the reasons for that is that approximately 75 to 80% of the environmental impact is locked in at the design stage. And really, you need, if you're going to improve the environmental profile of any product or process, you need to be looking at the impacts at that early stage. So life cycle analysis is a great tool in which you can really identify where your problems are and how you best might be able to solve them based on where the critical areas are going to be. However, in the Bisigodos project, that's something that we didn't do and perhaps should have done better. The life cycle analysis was really carried out towards the end of the project, and there were good reasons for this. Was that we didn't have the data to hand, so we couldn't do it right at the start because most of the products and processes hadn't yet been developed. The life cycle analysis that would have been done would have been very much a case of sticking your finger in the air and having a guess, whereas 24, 30 months down the line, we actually had a much better view of where it was. So we got an answer. Could we have informed our design better from the start of the process? Had we have carried out the LCA concurrently throughout the 36, 42 months of the project? Yes, I think we probably could have done, and that would have given us, again, perhaps a different outlook on how to balance a product profile. One of the issues of life cycle assessment is that it really only focuses on the environmental case of a given product or process. I think that realistically you need to involve stakeholders, you need to involve different companies, purchasers, consumers, producers, end of life, people who might look at recycling. You need to look at the whole supply chain as part of how you design a product or a process. And this is becoming important in a number of different industries, but it's going to become more important across the board. I think people should do that looking at more sort of decision-making tools, such as life cycle assessment, but also life cycle costing, social life cycle assessment, bringing them all together almost under one heading or as one tool that allows people to make more informed decisions that give you the more right answers for whatever given question you might have, if it's sustainability, environmental, economics, whatever question you're choosing to answer, but at least integrate as much information as you can into that decision-making process. I think one of the barriers to involving stakeholders within these sorts of research projects really stems around intellectual property, confidentiality from the commercial standpoint. Within the consortium, it's quite easy talking between different partners. It's all governed within your consortium agreement when you get the grant set up. However, external stakeholders, be they customers or even other companies who might be interested in the results of the project, it becomes very difficult to talk to them, and you have to start needing to get non-disclosure agreements and then get everyone on the consortium to agree that you're able to talk to a particular partner, and that can become quite time consuming, and often one partner doesn't agree because it might be a competitor of theirs and they don't want them involved in the process, and there's a lot of different issues that have to be considered. So internal stakeholders in terms of a project is really easy, but externally it can be quite challenging at times. The pros and cons of trying to incorporate RRI into research projects primarily stem around the benefits coming from perhaps being something more environmentally friendly, maybe looking at ways in which you're trying to be responsible towards the planet, towards society in terms of environmental footprint. The cons, as it were, would really be focused around the cost of trying to do so, and something that perhaps industry may be more reticent to do, because you typically trying to do something that's more environmentally friendly, more ethical, more socially friendly is going to be an extra added economic expense to the company. So they will tend to try and avoid it if at all possible. When you're thinking about designing some of these projects at the outset of the call, it very much depends on the topic text that's been produced by the funding body, whoever it may be. In this case, for us it was quite explicit to use algae to develop a number of different products. So for us, the RRI was very much embedded into the design of the project because that's what was governed by the call. But we were never explicitly asked to look at RRI. We were never explicitly asked to go and consult stakeholders. So that was never built into the design of the project. I think if RRI is to be included in funding calls in the future, and I think it should be included in funding calls in the future, one of the things that should be done is perhaps be more explicit about what is required, whether it be stakeholder engagement, whether it be assessing environmental or economic benefits, whether it's looking at a specific end product that's going to be more socially acceptable. It really should be given more details to those putting the projects together. One of the main lessons that I've learned from participating in the Prisma project is that we really could have done more towards RRI with the Bisigodos project, and perhaps should do more in the future, and it really is informing how we think about designing our projects for different calls, trying to incorporate some form of RRI into most of our grant proposals that we're putting into the future. So I think what I'm learning is a greater appreciation of what RRI is and how best to implement it in the future. If I was to give advice to people who are thinking about including RRI in a project or a consortium proposal, etc., I would think very closely about what the added value is going to be to the product. In a lot of cases, it can be added value in terms of environmental benefits, it can be economic benefits as well, but there's usually some kind of way of capturing a positive outlook from incorporating RRI into a project proposal. And I think it's something that people should look at in the future, but it should be done within the framework of whatever call is coming up. From my perspective, or perhaps the perspective of the Warwick grouping that were involved in the Bisigodos project, the project itself was really very much a complete success. We were able to produce a product that was based on technical specifications of an industrial partner. We were able to meet those specifications and deliver them scalable quantities of material that they were able to then use on an industrial pilot line. We were also, from an academic perspective, we were able to generate a couple of publications for the project as well.